Doing some deer bedding work today on a really neat little swamp island here. The landowner actually came into this area and did some cutting. I'm just in here cleaning up and setting up beds and things like that. So I'm done now. Take you around this area here before I head back into the big timber to do some cutting, and I'll show you what I was up to. Alright, so right up over there is the main part of the property. I'm on the far east end of it here, out in the middle of the marsh on this swamp island. As you can see, looking that direction and looking off this way, it's not huge. It's fairly long. I guess, I don't know, if I had to guess, 80 to 100 yards maybe long, but it is not very deep. It's probably only 15-20 yards across. But as I've been working here today, I've been seeing lots of deer beds, and all I did was come in and clean it up. I dropped a handful more trees, not too many, but just cleaned it up so there was more spots for deer to lay down. Alright, so here's one spot I came in and cleaned up. Made a spot there or there for a bed. I'm not sure which one the deer would prefer. Both were nice flat spots. There's a little bit more of a backstop. There we have a little bit of canopy with the hinged trees. So I just cleared them both, and we'll see where the deer lays down. But I just came in and got rid of some of the small stuff and left some of the leaves so it's nice and fluffy. Nice little bedroom where a deer can lay down and have an excellent view looking out over either side of the marsh. So there were two very well-worn deer trails. You can see this one right here. That was one of the main cleanup tools. I came through with the big chainsaw right away and got some of the down stuff that was blocking trails and bedding spots and things like that, and then I came in and cleaned up with that guy just to get some of the small brush and kind of make a path of least resistance. But here's one of the main trails running this side of the little island, and then there's one that runs on the back side over there. So I made sure this was nice and open, and they were already using it pretty well. Here's a nice flat spot I cleaned up. There's actually some, I feel like it looked like there was an impression here. Deer might have already been bedding here. Looking, I think I see some deer here. Either way, I cleaned this spot up. Here's a really nice high flat knoll. I can see, I think there might have been some hair here too. Either way, nice knoll. I mean, this is where a deer's going to want to look out. Got a great view. So I made sure to open this up. I took the brush saw, cleaned out that way, cleaned out that way. It's not too much to be able to sneak out that way if they really needed to. But I picked these high spots. I picked the nice flat spots. And those are the spots that I cleaned up and made my beds in. It's nice that the landowner dropped these trees, because we really did get a nice brushy response from letting all that sunlight in. He released a handful of oaks out here. So I've said it a million times, but I love that situation when we can have a handful of scattered oaks raining down acorns into the bedding. That just sets up an awesome bedding area. So he did all the big work. I just got to come in and fine-tune it, but the deer had already responded to the work he was doing. I just did some cleanup today. Here was a nice big bed right here, and I made sure this was open and able for them to use. There's the deer hair. I knew there was deer hair in this one, as you can see. But again, beautiful spot. If the deer's bedded here, you can sit and look out right over the marsh. Got the northwest wind right over his back, if it's a buck. But these islands do set up well for buck bedding, so I can assume there's a chance. But yeah, he's got a nice backstop with this brush that's blown up. I gave him a nice little escape cutting out that direction. Get out the front if he wants to. But just a perfect little bedding knoll for a deer to hang out. And that's what we want to see. Like I said, I can assume there's a fairly good chance that there's bucks hanging out here, especially when they're showing me they're hanging out here. Saw a handful of rubs on this island, and there's a little island over there that was actually had even more rubs. That one's set up even better for buck bedding. So I cleaned that one up as well. But I can assume that these two spots are going to give us some of our best chances at buck bedding on this property because they are so deep. And we logged the front part of this property, so that should set up well for doe bedding because it's close to the food sources that are on the front part of the property. And we're going to have we have a bedding cut already up on the swamp transition. There's going to be another bedding cut that I'll probably work on today or the next day that I come out here. That's going to be a really big bedding cut right over there. Those could potentially bed some bucks, but this is so back, it's so reclusive back here that I think this is where the bucks are going to want to hang out. They love these islands in a swamp. So if you have that setup, if you have swamp islands, those are great ones to do some work on. Clear them out, get some sunlight in, maybe hinge a few trees, and set up those beds. So here was another bed. You can see this one was pretty boxed in. It had trees kind of falling on top of it. So I opened it back up. Have a escape cutting out that direction, one cutting out this way. But again, just a perfect little lookout right over the marsh. Here's the spot I added a deer bed. It was pretty brushy right here. So I cut that in, go in that direction. Get down where the deer would be. Have my nice trail work in the back side of this bedding island, but again, perfect little bedding knoll. This is not a big island, but I am stacking a ton of beds on it. Speaking of beds, looks like there's a big impression right there. And there we got a massive bed right there. And lo and behold, the beds are right by a couple of hinge trees. So the deer were definitely responding to the landowner's work. All right, here's the trail that runs between the two islands. So that's the small island, and that's the larger island that I was just on. You can see there's a very well-worn trail that goes between them. That island had one very large bed on it. So my assumption is there was a buck hanging out there because he threw down quite a bit of sign right around that that lone bed in the form of rubs. So I think that sets up really well for buck bedding. Nice lookout spot. This was a huge area that was matted down. Almost makes me think that there was a bear or something rolling around out here. Definitely way too big to be a deer bed. Kind of interesting to see. So again, here's my trail that's working along the west side of the island. I'm showing you this side, so I'll jump over to the other side and show you what it looks like. Alright, I hop back over. I'm on the east trail. I did tip out some of these trees. The landowner had done that too, and the deer were following the script here. It's kind of a main trail running the backside here, just to give a little bit of that cover, or that feeling of security as they're working through what would be the downwind side of this, assuming that we have a northwest wind, which we do a lot of the fall. There's a nice big bed right up in there, down in there. But again, it was just about clearing the path of least resistance. Big saw first to get the big stuff, and then the steel brush saw. It's an FS 131. Very nice tool to have. So I like this kind of having that high grassy spot there. There was a bed or two kind of hanging out right there. So I made sure to kind of clean that up a little bit so they could lay down there. Made a bed right here. Again, just a big flat spot. The deer can look out over the marsh. I see this all the time. So this was not the current landowner, but whoever owned this property before put a box stand right on this island. They picked their best bedding location, probably on the property, and they stuck a box stand right in the middle of it. So completely nullifying any potential bedding out here. So I'm glad that's tipped over and turned to junk, because we want to give this area to the deer. I get it, it's a nice lookout over the marsh, but we can find other ways to be able to hunt this bedding. We'll likely set up a stand over on the timber side looking out this direction. It'll be a rifle stand, but I measured it from where I want to put it to the far island. It was only 160 yards, so well within range of the rifle. But again, here's the trail. There was a nice big impression right there. So you got the backstop, easy for a deer to slip out underneath. So that is definitely a deer bed. I can see hair in that one. Look at how nice and brushy and thick it is up there. And this is all because we're getting sunlight in here from the original cutting that the landowner did. It's exactly what we wanted. I'm sure before that deer could pretty much see from side to side of this little island, and there wasn't a lot of incentive for them to bed out here. But we changed that. And so there's a spot where they can run off the end of it. And again, I got the trail cutting back around the east side here. I want to make it easy for them to mosey, move around. Move the stick out of the way. With this little stuff, I just cut it and let it lay. It'll break down by the time our summer rolls around. Little twigs and stuff. See, we got a rub there. So I just let it lie and kind of stomp it down with my feet. If it's a little bigger and fluffed up, I'll push it off to the side. But I'm not too worried about like little twigs like that. So yeah, more rubs. Awesome to see. Now hopefully, given that we open this all back up, I shouldn't say we, I'm the only one out here today. Well, I should say we because the landowner did the cutting first. But given that it's improved with his initial cutting and my cleanup here, I'm very hopeful that there will be a handful of deer bedding out here this year, or perhaps a buck will call it home. I should show a quick look here, just what it looks like from out in the marsh. So there's the big island right there. And there's the little island. I kind of cut a trail cutting across over to there because that's where we're going to have a big bedding cut. Well, you can't quite see it, but there's a bedding cut right there. And on this one, I cut it down too. It might be tough to actually see in the video. But when I took this brush saw here with me, I cut my way out here, because if you mat this grass down, the deer will start using it, and even as it starts to grow back next summer, they'll follow the script. So I wanted to connect that bedding to this bedding, so I made my trail kind of weaving up through here. They'll find ways to get across the two, but I like to kind of guide and direct that movement when possible, kind of near certain stand locations. Try to set up the shot. So I keep wanting to end the video, but then I think of more I want to add to it. So here's where I want the rifle stand. So we got the islands out there. Here, I'll show. There's the one, the bigger island. And then that's the smaller one right over there. Got the trails cutting right across right here. So if we put the rifle stand right here, which it is a little ways out in the marsh, but there's still pretty nice backdrop with all these ash and stuff. If we put the stand right here, we can look out that direction. Our northwest wind blows that way, so we're blowing clean. There's nothing that way, just short marsh grass. And then we have a bedding cut right there. So this would be a stand you hunt during the rut. This would be a stand that you only hunt in the morning. You'd have to come in very early because you are cutting through the edge of bedding right there to get in here. But if you get back in here, this is the kind of spot you could sit all day during the peak of the rut and have probably some pretty fun hunts, because I cut in a corridor going that way along this edge, and that bedding had a lot of sign in it. That was a bedding cut we did a few years ago. I'm going to clean it up a little bit right now. There's a lot of deer sign in there. So there could be bucks running the downwind side of the bedding right here, right in front of you, maybe even in bow range. You could see bucks running between the islands, maybe bucks running out in the marsh chasing does. But either way, this could be a really nice spot to set a stand. Now we're going to have to, when I've set a stand in a marsh before, what we did at our place is we took some big blue, like 50-gallon drums, and cut them in half and put the posts in there and filled them with quickreed. I did a video on that. Worked really well. That would probably have to be done here because this is frozen right now. But I think it could be a really, really fun spot to sit during the peak of the rut. And since this is wet, we'll probably lay down pallets or slab wood or something like that just to make a little trail coming out to the stand so you don't have to slop through that 20 yards of wet to get in here. Either way, I think it could be a really awesome location. All right, y'all take care. God bless.